Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 33rd episode of A QISSAA with Ishika, quintessential and inspiring stories of South Asian artists. My name is Ishika Muchal, and I am coming to you from the unceded ancestral lands of the Gabrielino Tongva people, also known as Los Angeles, California. As you know, we've been dealing with many wildfires here in Southern California and across the state of California. So I hope that if you are here and if you've been affected, sending you good thoughts and hope that you all are safe and doing well. I am so excited to welcome my guest today, fresh off the UK and Asia tour of Life of Pi, actress Sonya Venugopal. A proud Californian, she has lived in New York for now 8 years. And in 2023, she made her Broadway debut in Life of Pi as Rani, while also covering for the role of Pi. Some of her many theater credits include the Life of Pi UK and Asia tour, Come Fall in Love at the Old Globe, Atlantis at Virginia Rep, and Maggie with Goodspeed Operahouse. She's also been a part of readings like MÂYΑ and In Emily's Words. Sonya also performed in the film Little Boxes, and her song evrymee is streaming on all platforms. She holds an MFA in musical theater from the Boston Conservatory and a BA in theater and communications from Santa Clara University. Outside of performing, Sonya loves searching for the best East Coast replica of In-N-Out, but is there such a thing? I don't know. And is an avid reader and runner, though the cold weather in New York City this time probably makes it very hard to want to be outside. I am honored to welcome Sonya Venugopal.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining.
Of course.
There was a little technical difficulty before, but we are alive and well.
Now.
We're here. Yeah. So, well, first of all, congratulations on your incredible tour. I was following your journey on Instagram, just watching all the places that you guys were performing.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was such a wild journey. I'm sure we'll get into that later, but finishing in a different part of the world in 2024 was a very exciting and wild experience.
Yeah, you guys covered so many countries. Well, we'll get that. Definitely. Well, rather than starting where we are now, let's go a little back. How did you get introduced to acting, and what made you want to pursue it as a career?
Yeah, so actually, my sister and I both, we're 2 grades apart, and we're like 18 or 20 months apart.
Okay.
Our parents, like most parents in suburban California, put us in after-school activities. And I don't think we seemed very sporty, so we didn't get put into sports. I mean, dance is definitely a sport, and we were put into dance at a very young age. So we did that competitively, like starting at, I think I was like 6 and she was 4, or maybe 5 and 7, I don't know, really young. So we were like heavy in the dance competition world. We would travel all over California for those. And our group was all pretty like similar aged girls. And one random time we all decided to go see Oliver, the musical, at the community theater.
Yeah.
And we saw when we went to that there were auditions for Annie for the next season. And so our entire dance team decided to audition for it. And since that point, my sister and I kept doing it. Nobody else did. But we kept doing show after show after show. Yeah. It sort of started like falling in love with doing musical theater. We did combined dance too, which was kind of cool. We got to use skill sets. But we just kind of the bug bit us, and I have not looked back since then. So that's sort of like what introduced us to just like the world of performing.
The sun did come out for you tomorrow.
Yeah, it literally did. Yeah, all the way back to Annie. That's what I should have tattooed on me somewhere. The sun came out. Yeah, that was like the thing that sort of jump started it all. And then at that point, we did pretty much until like through high school, we did a lot of we had community theaters, dinner theaters. Like our hometown was actually really arts centered, which was cool. All the high schools really were involved and had good drama programs. So there was a lot of opportunity, which was really cool to do it within your school, but also sort of within the whole community of like the Clovis, Fresno area. And then for college, I was like, you know what? I definitely know that I want to do this. I don't know if it's like the only thing I want to do because I'm a very decisive person. So I double majored and did theater and communications because I was like, I don't know, maybe I'll want to do something with PR or, whatever. But I wasn't at a BFA program too, which was a little bit more unique for, I think, a lot of actors. And to go to, for musical theater specifically, they go to a BFA program.
Sure.
But I decided I wanted to do liberal arts so I could get a more like well-rounded, holistic experience and could, you know, see what other options there were because I just like loved being at school.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I went and did a grad program after that because I was like, I want to deepen the, you know, skill set a little bit and hone in a little bit more. And then I knew I would have a showcase, which was really a blessing at the end of that experience to be able to then get connected and then move to New York. So it kind of all just like, it all started with dance competition troupe going to audition for Annie.
Right. Shout out, Annie.
Yeah, thank you for those.
Yeah. So what like prompted your move to New York and like what time frame was that like in your journey?
Yeah, it kind of lined up perfectly. So annoyingly, my sister and I are very close. We're best friends. We live together now. She's literally in the other room. But we, because we're 2 grades apart and my program at Boston Conservatory was 2 years, she finished college the same time I finished that grad program. And so we perfectly moved to New York together in 2017, just right after both of our programs had ended. And it was like there was no better time to do it and no better way to do it because we had in like support system, which is really one of the tough things I think about New York City. Is I'm sure LA as well. I mean, I haven't lived there as an adult actor, but I think it is. It can get very tricky if you don't have people around you. So that was like a big thing. I was like, oh, I get to like move there with her, and we kind of go through this together. And she's an actor as well. She does. But yeah,
very cool.
Yeah.
So once you moved, did you start like just auditioning right off the bat? What was that process like?
So like I said, I was lucky enough to showcase at the end of my grad program, and I did sign with an agency, which was super helpful because I wasn't part of Actors Equity at the time. I was like hadn't been doing back then. It's so different now. Back then, you used to have to do contracts and earn points, EMC points.
Like EMC,
so it's very different, the whole process now, and you can basically pay and you know what. But then I was like, I just want to work towards booking a contract that'll give me my equity card. So I was just going on auditions that my agents would send me in on. And I was very fortunate to have that because a lot of people don't. And there are horror stories about going and standing in line at 5 a.m. and then not getting seen. And like, my heart goes out to those people because they are so strong, stronger than I am. I never did that because I was like, this is going to make me want to leave the industry. I was able to get appointments and do it that way. But I mean, looking back now, I think it was probably like 200, maybe more than that, auditions and callbacks before I booked Life of Pi, you know? So it's like, you think about it in like the bigger picture and you're like, wow, actually people can be here for so many years. Some people it's like happens in a week. Some people it happens in, it's kind of like so dependent on the individual person and their journey, you know?
Yeah. And I'm so glad you say like the numbers part, because I think people who are in the industry get, you know, that like, even if you're not working, you're still like doing the work to get to that. But then like to actually quantify it into something that people can understand who are outside of the industry is so important, because otherwise people are like, what are you working on now? And I'm like, I'm trying. I'm
doing everything actually.
I'm doing everything. Like you're not going to see it until something happens, but the work is happening.
I think that's one of the trickiest things of being an artist in any capacity, in any sort of different field within the arts. It's like us auditioning, us taking classes, us writing, us collaborating with other people. Like no one sees all of that work. It's all under the tip of the iceberg. And it's obviously like most mediums, so like TV or stage, it's like you only really see what is out there, but you're not seeing everything that has to come before that, because there's always new work being developed and people trying desperately to like get their work to be produced, you know?
Yeah, and all of like the expenses that come with that. Like you get your degree, but this is like one of those fields where you just have to keep on taking classes.
Yeah, you're like, I hope for like everyone's sake that this ends up being something. I mean, and that's just like comes with pursuit and perseverance, and you know, I think a lot of things that you have to learn about yourself.
But yeah, I'm glad that you like had that kind of, I guess, leverage point of being able to get appointments, because those EPAs are difficult.
I mean, definitely once I became part of the union, I did start signing up for ones.
Sure.
like, I think it's a useful tool because it can be like a class, especially for the ECC, like the dance calls. It's basically a free class. You might as well go learn it, put yourself out there, kind of get back into like, especially post-pandemic. I think I'm so used to now for a live art, everything being a tape first, which is strange. And like, I don't know if I'll ever get used to that because I'm like, this isn't the way that we perform, you know? So it's a weird, it's like, it feels like there's this weird like wall between what we do. But yeah, it's definitely, it's always good practice to go. Like I told myself this year, I do need to start going back and like going to open calls and equity calls and just putting myself back in the room because it's definitely a while.
Well, you've been booked and busy and blessed, so.
I've been in other places, but now back.
So what was the audition process like for Life of Pi? Like, I guess, tell us the life of your pie journey.
This is actually, I'm going to give a shout out to my friend because this is a story that like, this person won't necessarily say it's because of them, but I had sent in, I remember like clear as day, the audition tapes for the initial call were in like early spring, like mid-spring.
Okay.
And then I knew they were having callbacks in like June. And then they were going to have it cast by probably end of July. But I sent in a tape and was like, okay, cool. And it was a casting office that I knew. So I was like, okay, you know, hopefully I'll get a call back to go in person because tapes are just not my thing. And I never got a call back and I was like, okay, weird, fine, whatever. I'll let that one go as we do everything. But then my friend was a reader for the callbacks. Like they were going to be in the room as the reader for the callbacks, but they couldn't make it for one of the days. So they were like, do you want to fill in for me? You know, the casting office, like it would be fun for you being in the room as a reader, super fun. I recommend everybody do that if they get a chance to do that, to be on the other side of it. So I did, I went in and this is like in June and I was like, okay, cool. Like I'll be the reader, whatever, you know, they're sitting there for 8 hours reading.
Right.
And so I did end up reading a lot of the Rani lines, a lot of the Pi lines, like when it was with Rani's and all of that. And at the end of that day, I was like, oh, that was really fun. Like, I really wish I could come in. But I'm the kind of person who would like say that. But I think my friend might have like pushed. I don't know. I don't really know, but that day I got an email being like, would you like to come in on like this Friday to read for Rani cover? Right. I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I would love to. But that Friday, I think was like a day that a really tough, like had to do with like Roe v. Wade. Like it was an abortion. There was some decision made on that Friday. And so I was so not myself. I was like, had been weeping before going into this callback. It was the worst callback I think I've ever done in my life. Like I couldn't remember the lines. I was like so all over the place, did it a million times, but my friend was in the room as the reader that day.
Okay. That's nice.
So I leave, I'm like, that was terrible, whatever. I'm on the street, like, you know, going on 38th or whatever out of Pearl. And I was like, okay, fine. I'm going to let that go again. And my friend called me and was like, can you come back in the room? And I was like, okay, cool. Why? So I went back in. It was like, I did it all again. They knew sort of where my frame of mind was. And they were like, hey girl, it's okay. Just like do your thing. Let's like on a few things, whatever. And then the next day I got the call with the offer and I was like, cool. And that was so this is all for Boston, for ART. Because we did the out of town tryout, not knowing that there was any sort of Broadway trajectory at all. So it was more just the fact that I was like, thank you to that friend, because I really do think they're the reason that I was even in the room to begin with. But also like, for whatever reason, my gut was saying go with, because I had also booked the Hadestown tour at the same time and go and be a swing, which I had never done and would have been canceled. But something was telling me to go with Life of Pi, even though it was like, it's a regional contract versus like a Broadway tour. I don't know. I think I was like, new work. This feels very important because when are South Asian stories told? You know, so many different things. I was like, okay, I just have to do this and I'm going to do this. Ends at ART. It's fine. I will have gotten to tell that story and be a new project. So all that to say, that's all very long-winded, but thank you to that friend. They know who they are.
Shout out to them.
Like, you know what? My God, I did you.
So you went from Boston and then after that to Broadway.
Yeah, it was Boston into 2023, like January, I think we closed. And then at that point, we already knew we were going to start rehearsals in February and then open in March. Yeah.
Okay.
It's also, that's weird. It's 2 years ago now.
Yeah. That's crazy. The 2020. I don't
like whole year. I'm like, everything's a wash right now.
Right. Oh my God. Yeah. So what was like the journey of the tour, I guess?
Yeah, that was also wild.
Yeah.
So we closed July. We closed early on Broadway, which was a bummer.
Mhm.
And who knows? Many reasons for that, I'm sure. I mean, I don't know if you know, but the market right now here, I think everything is just closing so quickly.
Yeah.
Really sad, and I hope it changes, and I hope we can
Yeah.
start to change that. But I so finished in July, and then I was like, great, back to unemployment, like cool.
Mhm.
And then from the beginning, the UK tour had already started. They had sort of the sounds of New York. They had. I hope you can't hear that; it's so loud.
Yeah,
Always.
I can't hear it.
Okay, great. They had like I think 4 months of like 2023, and then they were going into 2024, and they were going to close July of 2024.
Okay.
And the girl who was playing Rani had another commitment, and she had to leave like kind of suddenly. So
Okay.
they called my agents, and they were like, "Is she like rather than hiring someone and teaching them the track because it also
Yeah.
is high, which is like really it takes a lot of rehearsal time to do."
Sure.
They were like, "Do you think like would she be interested? We'll pay for the visa for the 5 months, like
Mhm.
all of that." And a few days later, I was like at the visa office in New York, getting a really terrible photo of myself in there, and I was on a plane like within a week. So it was kind of like a quick whirlwind. You're gonna go to this place I'd never heard of in the UK
Yeah.
and start. And they were a week to week, so we were changing locations every week
Wow.
which is really cool for me because I'm like, I'm an American and I haven't seen any of these places. So it
Right.
would be a
Right.
really great experience. Um,
Yeah.
but at that point, it had been 6 months-ish since I had done the show. So
Mhm.
it's a little bit scary starting. And they did definitely ease me in. That company, I love them so much. They are like
Mhm.
my family. I ended up doing the show more with them than I did with the people in the US, which is interesting.
Wow.
So they're definitely my family.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was wild. We traveled around. That was until July. So week to week, we were going to different places. That
Mhm.
finished in July. That whole company went to the UK or to the UK to Toronto to do the
Okay.
show as a sit down there. And I was doing Maggie at the time. So I had
Okay.
because my thing is like I love new works. And so I was
Mhm.
like, I don't want to miss out on an opportunity to do and develop a new musical. And
Sure.
it's like, but then I was lucky enough that they wanted me to come and do Abu Dhabi, which we were there for 2 weeks, and then Mumbai, where we finished. That whole company finished
Right.
closed in December, which is wild. Like, so I kind of
Yeah.
wasn't with them the whole time, but I was with them for a lot of it, which was really cool.
Right. And that's so special to like close Life of Pi in
In
India.
Mumbai, I know that
Yeah.
was wild.
Oh,
Like, I still don't really know if I have words to like explain how that felt.
right.
It was really
Oh.
cool.
Yeah, I'm getting like, oh, I'm feeling it just like hearing about it. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Can you like talk more about like what it's like to be on tour? I mean, what does that look like for you in a day and a week? Because you're
Yeah.
changing locations so
I will
often.
say, I think it's very different in the States than it is in the UK,
Okay.
mostly because in the UK, you are sort of in charge of like booking your own accommodation week by week.
Okay.
And yeah, you get like a subsistence allowance for each week.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
it's different in the sense that like all my friends who have toured here are like everything is set up for you. You just choose like option
Right.
A or option B, and then you go and you show up and they fly you, and
Right.
you're not booking your trains and like. So I think that was a little bit. It could be really chaotic and stressful, but I think I thrive in situations like that, so it was
Yeah.
totally fine. But yeah, you basically, I mean, you have your like little suitcases. You get on the
Mhm.
train. It's the nice thing about the UK is like most things are 2 hours of each other, so
Sure.
it's not super wild in terms of travel time. But
Mhm.
you get there, you get there on your travel day, which is usually a Monday, and it's your day
Mhm.
off. And then the next day you go into the theater midday and you do a tech rehearsal to tech
Right.
into the new space. And then you have a show that night, and you usually have shows until Saturday with
Oh my
doubles on
God.
Saturday, sometimes doubles on Friday.
Mhm.
And then you just like pack it up and go to the next place and do it all over.
That's insane.
It's really wild. It makes it hard for people who love routine, which I am a person who normally needs
Sure.
a structure. But I think you start to find your way with the group of people that you're with. Um,
Mhm.
but it did take me, I think it took me like a month to really adjust to that being what was going to happen, especially because when you're on tour, lots of people get sick or injured more
Right.
often than when you're just, you get to go home every night.
Of
So
course.
I was going on as Pi a lot as well, which is like
Mhm.
awesome, but also
Yeah.
like, okay, I have to stay healthy. I have to sleep. I have to make sure I'm doing
Right.
XYZ to sort of like stay up to par, you know?
Right. So if you went on as Pi, then like the Rani understudy or swing would come on for
Yeah, it was, because I wasn't the alternate, so it's, like, different because I did a different version of it for Mumbai and Abu Dhabi, but I
sure.
was the Rani on stage every day, and so the alternate also covers Rani, so the
Okay.
alternate would become Rani and I would become Pi if the
Okay.
alternate wasn't going on. It would just be a combination of us 2 basically.
Right.
And sometimes the main Pi, if he couldn't do Pi but could still be in the show, would do Ravi, so would be a
Okay.
instead. So it just
Interesting.
kind of is, it's always a puzzle. And for this show particularly, it's like really
Yeah.
tricky. And I don't know how I'm like blessed the tour that's in the US right now because
Right.
it's just a lot.
Yeah, because there's so much like puppeteering to learn as well
Yeah.
for the show.
Yeah. And as a non-puppeteer had never even like I had no idea what that even meant walking in,
Right.
you know, for the first time. I feel like I've learned so much and I have such an appreciation for what they do. Like
Mhm.
that still blows my mind. I still like would look at the tiger at the end of the show and forget there were humans like operating it. Like I really did. And it
Yeah.
sounds ridiculous, but I like truly I was like, there were animals on the stage. Like
Right.
wild.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw like just from some of the videos that you were posting on your Instagram, I was like, this looks
It's
so
wild.
legit.
Yeah, it's
It's
wild. I
beautiful.
really like praise those people because
Yeah.
that is a skill. We got to go into the puppets like randomly one day after
Mhm.
rehearsal, and I went into the like heart of the tiger, and I was just like, I could barely stand in there for like
Yeah.
2 seconds. How are they doing a 2.5 hour show in that
Right.
position? Like, I really don't get it.
Oh my God.
Wow,
Our bodies are crazy.
I know.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite place that you performed in? If
Ooh, honestly, it's so hard to decide just because I feel like well, audiences are very different in different places. And
Sure,
I
sure.
mean, of course, for the like obvious reasons, the debut of Pi that I did in New York probably will just be one of the most like overwhelming
Of
sort of
course.
like emotionally because like my dad's family, which like it was they were celebrating like 50 something years of being in the country and like
Oh,
none of them have been back to India. So it was like this whole
yeah.
thing happened to be on the day that they were all it was wild. It just like serendipitous, really wild.
Right.
Um, but I don't like that wasn't my favorite place. It's just like it's nice that everyone got to
Right.
participate in that.
Right.
I think out of the UK, Edinburgh was my favorite because the festival was going on, which is
Yeah.
awesome and wild. Of course, it's like
Yeah.
there's just artists everywhere, but that energy is
Right.
really palpable and I think really cool to experience at some point in your life.
Mhm, mhm.
And I had a surprise go on for Pi that week too. And
Uh-huh.
I was working on getting the global talent visa at the time, and I had
Mm.
someone come and review the show. So I also got like reviewed there, which was like a cool
Right.
so Edinburgh
Wait,
also
were you in Edinburgh in 23 or 24?
well, my sister and I went actually randomly just on our own to go see a friend in the festival in 23. But in 24
Okay.
during the tour, we ended, I think we did like Glasgow, Edinburgh, and then we ended in Manchester. So it was like towards
Okay.
the end of that tour, like the first
Okay.
part of it before going across the world.
Gotcha. Okay, because I was in Edinburgh in
In
a
24?
show in 24.
Oh my gosh, wait, what are the odds of that? What show was it?
I know. Tiny Little Town. It was a new musical, like
Wait,
for the
that's
Fringe.
so cool. Wait, that is wild. We were literally there at the same time.
I know. That's why I was like, I have a feeling that not that our paths crossed, but we were in the
So
same
our paths
place.
might have crossed. So it's pretty like that area is so
Yeah.
small too. Like
Pretty
we were all
dense.
walking around. Oh my gosh. Wait, that's wild.
That's insane.
Oh, that's so cool though. Okay, we're
Yeah.
gonna have to talk about that later because I need
Yeah.
to know more about that experience.
Yeah. Yeah, Edinburgh's such a beautiful city, and during that time, it's just like
It's so
everything is
like
art. It's
like there's
amazing.
nothing else like that, I don't think. And then it's like super contrasting because Mumbai, I would say, was my other favorite place I went, but it wasn't
Mhm.
because the theater that we were in, unfortunately, we couldn't hear anything like that was like if people were laughing or clapping or like
Mhm.
had any responses, which was a bit of a bummer.
Okay.
Apparently, everybody loved it, and the reception
Okay.
when I would go after and like talk to people were like weeping and very moved. But
Oh.
I think Mumbai was just again, it's one of those things where you're like, when am I going to tell a story so geographically close to exactly where the story
Exactly.
yeah, like that is not something that I'll probably ever get to do again in
Mhm.
my life. just if I'm being honest, but it's really just a cool experience.
Yeah. Well, I hope you do get to do that again.
I know. I hope everybody gets to do that.
Yeah.
It's wild.
This is just the beginning of your career. Yeah, that's so beautiful. Yeah, I think I totally get what you mean about like it's weird performing for different people because every culture has like a different way of showing that they like something, and like with the reception. So that's definitely how do you gauge whether someone's actually enjoying it if they only tell you afterwards and don't react at all during the show.
It's a very interesting, and we I don't know if you like the book and the movie and the play are all very similar in terms of the plot, but there's a scene in the play where it's 3 religious leaders, all different, like one's, you know, we have like Zaida Khan, we have a traditional like Catholic Christian priest, and then we have Panditji, who is like a traditional for India. So it's like going to the Middle East was interesting because sort of the reception, and we had to be very careful about how we had conversations around religion, because in the play it's not like Pai is not saying one thing is right or wrong, or it's sort of like Pai is so open to everything and curious about everything, which I think was the best way for it to be presented in these different communities. But that was a big thing where it was like we had to have conversations about that and make sure that, you know, everything that we were doing wasn't encroaching on the culture or overstepping in a way that was going to be received
like offensive,
so it definitely was something that, I mean, I was thinking about it because we were supposed to go somewhere else before Abu Dhabi, and it would have not, like a woman even wearing, like not being covered was going to be an issue. And obviously Pai is like in a sleeveless, a woman and male are both in like sleeveless costumes. So it was like little things that you had to think about that I think like when you're in the States, you don't necessarily think about in the same way. So it's even just opened my mind and my perspective on what stories are we telling where, and are we aware of the impacts that they're going to have before we go there? Like, can we open it to conversation with the audience? Are there outlets for people that are seeing it? Like, you want to just always make sure that there is some kind of communication around specific topics. So I don't, and I don't know how I even got onto that, but that was something that like this show made me very aware of. I don't think I've really thought about it before because I've only ever performed in the States. So like going to other places, even Britain. I mean, there's different things that like are going to be offensive to a British audience that are offensive to an American audience or to a Middle Eastern audience. So it's just being aware of that was really interesting.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up because it's like we have to be careful of not being like self-righteous with the material that like, oh, we have this thing we're going to bring in and it has to be received, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, we talked about like one of your major highlights of your recent. So what were like some of the early struggles, I guess, and how did you face, I guess, like a lack of representation, any stereotyping, how finding roles that you felt aligned with? What was that like?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting looking back now because when I was younger, so my sister and I would, more so her, because I sort of was like, I don't like this world. But we would drive quite far to LA to audition more for TV and film. And it back then, being ethnically ambiguous was like how they coined you.
Right.
And so you never really felt like you could identify with what you actually are or even like what they wanted you to be. So I feel like being a kid and fitting into that was like really a challenge, and it definitely gives you like major imposter syndrome, which then carried on through like my college life and then even to like grad school. Like I feel like every step of the way I was like, I don't know who I am. I don't know like what I'm supposed to be doing. And then like it's changing so rapidly of like, you're this, like you'll be golden. You should change your last name to just like VEE because you'll be able to play 1,000 different things. And I'm like, this is actually looking back, it's like, that's ridiculous.
Right.
So I think a lot of those challenges, I mean, that's like the challenges I think with like identity and sort of the through line of that. Outside of that, like challenges just in like, you know, when you're a kid and you're like wanting to be a kid and a grueling schedule for a show, like that is just something that I don't think we really think about. And like those who are dedicated to doing it will do it. And so we do, but you miss out on a lot of things. And that kind of, like bleeds into your regular life too. Like I've missed probably like 6 really, really close friends' weddings from moving to New York to now, just like as an adult, because I've been doing a contract. So I think like I have to try to remember to balance like that challenge of I'm still a human and like I'm so dedicated to what I'm doing and being a storyteller, and like I really want this to be a successful and fruitful career, but I also want to be a human to the people that support me along the way the whole time, you know? So I think that's a challenge that's not like an acting challenge per se.
Right.
But yeah, the whole like identity, imposter syndrome, like all of that, I think did start when I was really young, but I didn't really realize it until later. And I think with Life of Pi, well, even before Life of Pi, I did a musical called Come Fall in Love, which is based on BLJ.
Yeah.
I think it's a great movie if you haven't seen it. That sort of like triggered something in me about, because I'm mixed, I'm half white, half Indian, and I guess I'm half Italian, but you know, white, it's so white. My mom is from Connecticut, so it's not like she's like an immigrant from, you know, so I think that like sort of turmoil about identity and like, do I fit in this category? Am I Indian enough to be in Life of Pi? Am I like in that musical, Come Fall in Love, it is they're living in Boston, and there was a Western ensemble and an Indian ensemble, and there were 2 of us, myself included, who were in like the cross. We did both.
Right.
It was really I appreciated that because I was like, this is realistic, and it makes me less confused about like I have to be Indian, I have to look Indian, I have to like know about the culture, and all of these things that I think come up when people are like, oh, you're Indian, great, you're South Asian, awesome, like you must know this. And I'm like, okay, whoa, I'm actually like learning about it as I go, which is successful. But so that shows sort of like, I think that's when that was 2022. I was like, whoa, I still am like challenged by this idea of being mixed and like what is my identity, and am I enough to be South Asian representative? Am I enough to be in a show where like it's not about that, but then I'm the only one who is South Asian, and there's like themes that have to do with certain cultural ideas, and it's all very like can be very overwhelming. I think sometimes step back and say, you know what, you're doing the work that you like, that aligns with who you are. And also you can learn from, I think there was something that you had asked about like art influencing you and you influencing art, and like how that sort of cyclical cycle, like how does, you know, it's like that is such an interesting thing to think about, because it's like you can align with something and still be learning about the culture or the themes or the lived experience in the same way that like you can have lived something, and so you know that you're influencing the art because of that, you know.
Definitely.
Such an interesting thing, like to think about that. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, because it's like, do I belong in this space? And even if I know I belong, how do I honor it and do it justice? It's such a,
and sometimes you don't feel like you have the agency that other people do, who maybe grew up in India or have a family member who, you know, does traditional celebrations of even like, I don't know, there's so many things where I'm just like, I don't celebrate that. I know what it is culturally, and because I'm very Americanized now, I don't personally celebrate it, but I love learning about it. And I think like, does that put me in a position where like in that musical, for example, there's scenes where they're doing like traditional pre-wedding ceremonies or pujas or things that like I don't personally as Sonya do in my life, but it doesn't mean that I don't still have a connection to people who do that or learn from it, you know. But it is like a weird thing where you're like, should I even be doing this? But like the answer is yes, because the alternative is someone who doesn't have any connection. I don't know.
Right.
Thing.
Yeah, it's, I mean, this is like a whole other can of worms, but it's just like not even just in art, but just like in life as someone who is like an immigrant, who is like Indian American or whatever - American. It's like, even if you're raised doing those things in comparison to someone who is like from India, for example, it's always like a weird thing, because you feel like, oh, I'm not doing it enough, or I'm not doing it like the way that, or you think that I'm not doing it the way that you do it, you know? So it's definitely like this weird little middle ground to deal with of, am I enough on either side? I don't know.
Truly. Yeah. It's that mixed complex. I think that a lot of people have. Like, it can be mixed in like ethnicity or mixed in cultural, like there's so many ways that I think people are mixed in this country just because of all of the immigration that's, you know, we are the product of.
Yeah.
It definitely comes with a lot, I think. A lot of pressure for a lot of people too.
Definitely. Like both sides of that dash are very confused.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like finding spaces artistically that are open to having conversations about this is really helpful. And like I have been lucky enough that like Life of Pi and most of the shows that I've done actually recently that are centered around South Asian stories give space to people who do feel like maybe they'll be asked a question and they shouldn't feel bad if they don't know, or if they need to ask, you know, guidance from other people. Cause I think like, I don't know, there's been so many times where I'm like the person of color in the room kind of thing. Like academically too, it's like goes back to even not a theater related, you know, course. Like people turn to the person who it's like, well, this is about your culture, so you should know X, Y, and Z. And it's kind of that weird, actually, like I'm still learning just as much as people are. And like I want to be an advocate for what I do know, but I also want to make sure that we're all in like spaces that are very safe to talk about it, and to make mistakes and to feel like it's okay to not like know everything.
Yeah. I mean, like you're in the class, you're not the teacher for a reason.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting to like what you're saying, that a lot of the stories that you've gotten to be a part of the telling of have been South Asian in a way. And I guess for me, I'm just thinking a lot of my post-grad things that I have gotten to do that are like cool projects or whatever have also been because I'm Indian. Like that's what's opened the door to them. But then I guess it's a thing of like, as artists of color, we often get like pigeonholed into this idea of like, tell your stories.
Yeah.
But, like, what does that mean? And I guess I'm asking like, how do we expand what is considered a South Asian story, or what is considered like a person of color story? And how do we transcend being able to, I guess, do both?
That is
so hard.
It's such a tricky thing because I think it sort of feels like you have like, I mean, as an industry, there's a lot of lack of representation, unfortunately. And I think in my experience, there's been, not as recently, but when I first moved to the city, it felt a lot more like I was getting pigeonholed when I was in the room. It's not like I was being submitted for only South Asian roles. It's like I was going in for everything, but then once they saw me or I came into the space, it sort of became about that instead of about me as a human and an actor. Like there was an I feel like years past, I went in for The Mystery of Edwin Drood, which like there's a character in it who I think it's based off a novel. I honestly don't know, but it's a musical and it's like a farce and it's supposed to be really funny and quick and all of that. But it's the role was someone who is Indian, like South Asian Indian, and they wanted it to have an accent. But the person who originated it was a white woman, like way back when, doing a stereotypical accent. And so I went in and I was like, I just used my American accent because I was like, you know what? I'm Indian. I'm South Asian. And I need to put on something that you are stereotyping as what should be represented in a way. So I feel like that was like happening a lot. And even so, like the lack of representation in big commercial outlets, like I truly probably like, if I don't know if you could, but could you name something other than Aladdin that has played in the last like 10 years that is a South Asian story, or like about, or even has like a predominantly South Asian?
Right.
Like, I don't think it's, I mean, and that's not just, I am a little biased because like Life of Pi had like 18 debuts and 90% of the cast was South Asian, which was incredible. But I just think that like happens so often anymore. And I think that is a tricky thing for people to navigate because it's like, you don't want to play into a stereotype, but there's not a lot of opportunity for you to pursue what you want to pursue. So I don't know.
Yeah. And even within like the diaspora, there's so much, like so many different experiences. And I think we're at a point where like we're fighting for like 1 or 2 stories and trying to feel seen in those 1, 2 stories, you know? And
Yeah.
it's so hard because everyone's lived experience, even as a South Asian has like 8 countries.
I know, it's like, it's so big. What does
Right.
that even mean anymore?
What does that mean? And South Asian from a place in South Asia is different than a South Asian from here, or like from me in California to like someone growing up in Texas. I don't know.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, there's so much room for different varieties of representation.
Yeah.
I think.
I think I also like, this is just sort of going off on a little tangent with that, is I
Please
think
do.
that there's room for like the marketing and the like media around the South Asian stories that are being told
Mhm.
and the ones that are being developed. Like, I think there's not enough like push or like marketing around the things that are happening, because I feel like there's a lot of stuff that is happening, and like a lot of people in this community are definitely writing. They're turning to
Right.
outlets of like, I think like Ari, actually, who you've had on here before,
Yeah.
she is incredible. She's like written a bunch of different things, and like she's really using her community and her skill to make her own art, which is incredible.
Yeah.
Like people like that, I'm like, those are the people that I think need to be marketed and need to be like supported financially, and so we can start to like break against these stereotypes of like, well, there's only one story, so only 20 of you are ever going to be able to be in this version of, you know, XYZ. I just think like that there is a missed opportunity a little bit with like marketing people and like really finding that work to bring to the more commercial world.
Yeah, definitely. I love that you mentioned her. Like, she's one of my mentors, and I love that she like brings people up with her.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
and I think that's like within communities of color can go either way.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, this is like a group of 10 people that made it, and they're just gonna be like very exclusive to their 10 people that are like, we are the face of South Asian representation, versus like, make the table bigger, bring more chairs.
Yeah, I'm like, how can we just always be making more space at the table?
Right.
That's truly at the end of the day. It's like, why would you not? Because we've all gone through it. So like, why would you not want to be the other side of that? Like my sister and I have said since we started acting, basically, like at some point we really hope that we can like have a production company that we are just like championing, I can never say that, all of the community and then some, you know? It's like, it's not an exclusive, like we just want to make the opportunities available for people. Like that is, you know, that's the ultimate goal. And I think a lot of people are trying to do that, but it is tough when there's little communities, sort of like mini communities within the community. Like you have to like, which one, if I'm part of this one, like, can I still, you know, so it's, it's a very, it's exhausting sometimes.
It is exhausting.
Ari is such a good example of like someone I feel like I see things that she's written or like a content that she's doing, and it's like a bunch of different of my other friends who I know, I'm like, oh, this is incredible. That's
right. Yeah, that's the spirit of an artistic community, I think. Is that.
And we need that. I mean, especially post-pandemic, like that really showed us how quickly things can just peace out. And like, I think that we really learned after that the importance of community and then creating with your community.
Yeah.
Going back to like writing your own work. Like, why are we not more adamant about that? I'm like, there are no opportunities for us. We should make them. We have to find out, you know?
Right. Yeah. And then, but like, even when it comes to writing, I mean, I guess this is just like spiraling, because I feel like I'm dealing with this a lot too, of whenever I sit down to write my thing, I'm like, is this only going to be received if I talk about being Indian?
That's the thing. It's like, that goes back to, it's the whole cycle, isn't it?
Yeah. I literally wrote a piece in college that I was like, I started off being like, blah, 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 my brown skin. And I was like, nope, I'm not going to do this.
That's not it.
No.
You're not doing that.
No, this is age old. I need to stop repeating this. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
But like Ari, I guess, is like one of my mentors, but do you have any people or any things that have been like especially influential or that you've like looked up to, any mentors, stuff like that have guided your journey?
Well, I think I have to say, we have the most supportive parents. And I think like it really starts with that. And so there was never like, I was so privileged to be able to be supported through every single step of like, yeah, we know you're not going to make a lot of money right away, or yeah, like we'll spend whatever to help you get, you know. So I think like I look up to them in that sense that like they have truly been the rock the entire time, and they will be forever.
Yeah.
I also like really admire and love watching my sister do, like we do, I help her with tapes and things. I think it's like really interesting to see someone who you've known your whole life and like how they grow as an actor and like learning from that. And then I know these are all like not one singular like, you know, celebrity, but
but this is what I'm asking.
Never think of when people are like, who's like a celebrity that you, I'm like, I don't think I like admire celebrities because I think real people are more interesting.
So true. Yeah.
But I truly will always say you can learn so much from your peers. Like every show, every company that I'm in, I feel like I just am a sponge, and I'm like, how are they navigating this? What are they doing? How can I learn from them? If it's like singing a certain way, if it's, you know, a choreography piece, then I'm like, okay, what are they doing that's making them successful? In Life of Pi, it was kind of a mix, and I was on the younger age side of it. We had some people who were like so experienced who had done multiple Broadway shows, TV and film. And I think being like confident enough in yourself to just ask questions and totally like let them tell you their experience and like their advice. Because I think there's no person that is like, we're always learning, and they are too. And so I think it's like a nice opportunity to get to know your peers and like sort of their experience, because we all do it with such different levels of experience and skill set, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the show that we went to Edinburgh with was also a very similar experience where I was like, I think one of the youngest people there, and there was so much to learn from everyone. Just like, even if you're not asking a question, you're just sitting there like listening to people yap while they're eating. And I'm like, wow, I'm learning so much.
Truly. And it's like, it's not always like learning about something that pertains to the show. It's like it's something, just a life thing that you're learning, which inherently, because we're actors and we're storytellers, everything that we're learning in life is reflected in the work that we do. So I think it's just being willing to be a sponge is like always
absolutely. Absolutely. And I guess, so that was a question about influential people. But as you know, the show is called QISSAA with Ishika, and QISSAA means episode. So is there any influential QISSAA that has shaped your life or your artistic form, or that just really stands out?
Ooh. This was like the one that I didn't think about beforehand, of course.
This stumps everyone. It's okay. We can also come back to it.
Because it's like, I feel like I never like think about my like little episodes that like influence the rest of your life. But it's like, oh my gosh,
we can come back to it.
I don't even know. Yeah, let me think about that.
Okay.
I thought about that one. I knew that one was going to be asked. Like, I should have known.
What are some of your goals, or like what this is also like a big question, but like what legacy would you like to leave if you had agency over that?
I think I definitely, like, there's the sort of materialistic things of like, I really wanted to work on Broadway, work in the West End, like work on TV just once. And like, I'm very happy that I've made my Broadway debut. And I honestly think like now I don't really care like if I do that ever again, or if I consistently do that. I think now it's more about being specific about the stories or the project. I think I've even started to sort of really, even from the audition standpoint, being like, this is something I really want to do, or this is something I don't necessarily think is going to progress my, you know, like growth in being a human or an actor or anything. But yeah, I think it's like, I went to grad school because I also eventually think I want to teach. So I wanted to be able to teach at a collegiate level, because I feel like going back to my alma mater or like something like that down the line to be that version of myself is a goal that I have, just because that again is like another way to give back. And to, like, give people the tools that maybe like I had to find along the way, but like, get in the beginning of their journey. And then that production company, like I really hope that my sister and I can do that, because I just think that that's like gonna be hopefully a really beneficial tool again for other people and artists.
Yeah, I mean, that would be so powerful, like the way that you're talking about it, just creating that space for artists to thrive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really special. Do you have any advice for artists who are just starting out or people, any South Asian artist?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, honestly, like I think when it comes to advice, one of the things, I mean, I've already said it. I think being a sponge, you have to like really absorb everything always from like anyone around you. But I also think like specifically for women and being South Asian and making a space for yourself in every room is like not being afraid to actually speak and take up space. Which you hear all the time. Like you need to take up space. You need to don't like close in on yourself. But it's like all of our professors would say that, and I didn't really get what that meant until I was like very far into the life of like not during ART, not during Broadway even. Like, I was very not confident in most of those settings. I was like, okay, I'm still here. I'm an imposter. I'm here. I think like throughout last year going and touring in the UK and like meeting a bunch of new people, and I really gained the confidence to take up space. And it doesn't mean like in an arrogant way. It's just like you being you, and then that is reflected on the work that you're doing, and people are so receptive to that, which is really cool. So not being afraid to take up space and like ask questions and go for it. Like just go for it. The only thing that is going to happen is you might not get it, or you might not, you know, it might not turn out how you want it to, but there's no point in not trying, because it's just like you can be in a South Asian story, you can be in a non-South Asian story, you can be in, it's like it shouldn't matter. You should just go for it if you want to go.
The world is your oyster, as they say.
It's always that like cliche stuff, and you're like, I hate this.
I was just talking to someone who was like, I never understood the cliches, but then at some moment in your life it clicks, and it's like they weren't lying.
It's so true. It's like you hear all these little like words, like I'm sure my professor said like be a trailblazer and do this and that. And it's like, what are you freaking talking about? Like, I don't understand. And then you're like, oh, but there are people like after I did a pie show as a woman and came out the stage door, there are those people that tell you like that impacted me so profoundly. You have no idea how bad I needed to see that on a stage. Now I know what I want to do with my life, or my daughter is so inspired to X, Y, and Z, or you know, I never thought that, you know, it's all of those things that like, I think until you're faced with that in real life, you're like, oh, you can be a trailblazer. You can set the example for people. You can like really, go after what you want to go after, because it does impact people, which is cool.
Yeah. You never know who you'll touch.
You never know.
Yeah. We touched on this a little bit earlier when you were talking about like row and stuff. I think the reason that I want to be an artist personally is like because it's a way of telling these stories that we don't often get to hear, you know, and like working at that intersection of arts and activism. So the times are weird. I guess, how would you, to put it lightly, how do you think we as artists can use our mediums to continue to shape culture and society for the better?
That is an interesting, and I think definitely, obviously, can be a very deep question. But on a more like, not surface level, but I do think the pandemic sort of taught us a lot and solidified what a lot of us thought we were doing, but like really we were like, oh, this is actually true. Like believing that art can heal, like have a healing power and heal people when the world needs it most is something that I think like we have to hold on to in uncertain times as artists, just because otherwise we truly like would feel so lost, like most of us did when the pandemic hit, and we were like, oh, I can't be an artist. Like, what am I? Can I be an artist? Does this even matter? Like, what matters? You know, it's that whole crisis. And I think like we've seen sort of like the fruits blossom after that, and like can see the fruitfulness of like really believing that what we do affects people.
Right.
Sometimes you just like, I don't know, you just need that like happy. It's like when you go to see a show and you're like,
Yeah.
I know that I needed that, but it touched me in such a way that I can't even explain, but I now feel better, even though I know like so many other things in the world are happening. And
Right.
But I think like, it just,
Yeah.
we have to believe that it is actually doing something that is good and that like will inspire conversations about like, I can't tell you how many, because we had to be on Zoom. I had so many more candid conversations with some of my friends who are artists and some who weren't. And it was like very interesting to see the different ways in which they were using creative outlets like writing or drawing or like holding little conversation spaces with people to sort of deepen their craft and also like be enlightened about different points of view. Because I think that in these tricky times, it's really important to also remember that like everyone is a human with a different point of view, and we still have to be open to hearing that and having conversations about that, you know? Oh no.
Hi. Sorry, my internet went out.
I was like, oh no. It's
Wait,
also
can you see
bored,
my
so that's
face?
probably, I can't see your face.
Huh?
Your face isn't there anymore, but that's okay.
Okay. You know what? That's just how we're gonna finish the
This is,
episode.
I was gonna say we're at 4 anyway, or whatever time
Yeah.
it is for you.
I'm
1.
gonna solo you. I'm gonna solo you.
Party.
Guys, technology is so weird, and it's really been testing us today. But yes, I agree with what you were saying.
I know, I was like, oh, poor thing. She probably feels so bad because it was like right in the middle.
I know. Yeah, but what you were saying was not at all surface level. That's very important about like the healing power and just like making people laugh and making people smile in times when they want to just cry.
Yeah, and having it goes back to that community too. Like just you know that they're there, so we might as well be strong and try to create in times of turmoil. Honestly,
absolutely. Well, I guess my last question, now that you can't see me, is what projects are you working on, or like what's upcoming that you can share with us?
I because I got the global talent visa, which is very exciting. I now legally can work in the UK, so I do have a few things coming up in the UK for 2025. They haven't released anything yet, so I can't like technically say, but eventually, I'm not very good at like updating my Instagram or anything like that, like so people never really know what I'm doing. But for those things, I will like. I'm very excited to share them because they are South Asian stories and centered, which is really cool.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so exciting. Well, where can people find out more whenever you do share about that?
I guess Instagram. I don't really. Yeah, I'm like, I need to get better at that. Actually, this will prompt me to become a better sharer when it comes to things. Because I usually do it after the fact, which is not helpful at all.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, and your website as well, right?
Yeah. I'm trying to get better about updating that. I think that's not super up to date, but it will be.
Sure. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for sharing and sticking with me through the weird technical difficulties of today. Yeah, and I really appreciate the conversation and just like your perspective and you sharing your journey. And there's so much to learn from your experience. So thank you for taking the time.
Having me. And also, as a Californian, I feel like I have to just say, like, I'm sending my love and my heart out to everybody there that's been affected.
Thank you.
I just, I'm praying every day that things get better. I think there's rain coming. I think
there is.
Earlier, parents were like, it's coming to them. So I'm really hoping that sort of eases a little bit. But for everyone, we're really trying. I know a lot of us in New York.
Yeah.
How can we, send resources over there? So I think just anything we can do, and also sending prayers and love for everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, there's a little pitter patter outside right now. So hopefully that bodes well for the fight. Yeah. Well, thank you so much again. And to everyone watching who tuned in, thank you so much, even though you can't see my face. But make sure to save the date for the next QISSAA, which is the 5th of February at 9 a.m. on a Wednesday. It's a different time, but it'll be amazing. And it's with Sheila Ramesh, who's a music composer and director. And she's
I'll be there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Sounds great. All right. Well, have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye.